worshiper. You are not in control. This cannot be. It is existence. Rupture. Within our grasp.
No mana. Not yet.
Killing frost.
Not yet.
So today I'm going to be showing you my gas grenade build and what makes it work. If you're after a super meta build, this isn't it, but it is a rewarding, fun build that will help you beat the strongest of bosses with a little elbow grease. What is gas grenade, you might be asking? Gas grenade is a 3-stage skill with multiple ways of playing it. You have the initial impact, which is what shows the main tooltip damage when you look at the skill. Then the poison cloud damage, which has good scaling and has some interesting builds around it. Finally, you have the explosion, which is when the poison cloud is detonated, which scales the highest. This is what my build is utilizing for damage. There is many ways to detonate the poison cloud. Radiant Grief Helmet ignites any monster on your screen, causing them to ignite the cloud. Birth of Fury Boots drop ignited ground wherever you step, causing any clouds to explode. Only issue is the move speed being 15%, which is okay early game, but you are wanting 30% plus for late game. Finally, we have some skills which will ignite the clouds on contact. Only issue is then having to use another skill, which creates downtime on damage and less dodging. The support gems I've taken with Gas Grenade is Scattershot, because the clouds can overlap damage. The explosions can shotgun, causing multiple hits from one attack, so although I am decreasing damage by 20%, I'm gaining a lot more from the multiple hits. I was using Primal Armament here, but realized because we don't have any other element damage on my gear, that Fire Infusion gives the same damage without the 20% mana multiplier. Immolate is very strong because we are not igniting the cloud with the gas grenade itself. It adds 30% extra fire damage. Elemental Focus adds 25% more fire damage, and for the same reason as Immolate, the downside of the gem doesn't affect us. For the final gem, I swap it out depending if I'm bossing or not. Magnified Effect is brilliant for mob clear in maps, but when I'm fighting a boss, I go Concentrated Effect for the 40% more area damage, but its downside reduced area, which doesn't really matter when single target and gives a massive explosion damage increase. There are many different ascendancy we can go with this build, like Gemling with the improved main stats and mana costs, Deadeye with the extra projectile and tailwind buff. I have gone Witchhunter on mine, as Zealous Inquisition helps clear heavy density of mobs, which you will find in breaches and the ritual content. Witchbane and No Mercy help when fighting bosses, as it lowers the cooldowns, making the big slams and one-shots less frequent. I have then gone Pitiless Killer for the last ascendancy point, helping clear mobs and taking the last 5% off unique bosses with Culling Strike. Judge, Jury and Executioner is an awesome node, taking between 5% to 30% HP off the target when hitting them on full HP with Decimating Strike. The reason I don't use it is because Radiant Grief hits with the Ignite first, which doesn't proc the Decimating Strike. The Sorcery Ward granted from Obsessive Rituals is really powerful if you have really high armor or evasion on your build. At one stage I had a 1800 evasion body armor and loads of evasion scaling on the tree, giving me a 7000 shield. But because I'm using Cloak of Flame, I don't have enough defensive stats to make it worthwhile now. Because bosses do massive physical slam attacks that armor or evasion can't protect you from, I use Cloak of Flame that turns 40% of physical damage to fire, and I have increased the base max fire resist from 75% to its cap of 90% by going Prism Guard node and the nearby max fire resist nodes and Unnatural Resilience node with max fire res on jewels to make sure I hit the cap. Another thing I targeted on the tree is cooldown reduction, because you can be left with downtime on the gas grenades if you spam them. Volatile Catalyst and the nodes next to it are a good start. Also grabbing the grenade cooldown on the grenade wheel. Distracting Presence has great synergy with your Witchbane Ascendancy node. Finally, the Authority node gives another 10% to make sure we have enough cooldown to spam gas grenade, until we run out of mana, of course. Mana will become an issue once your grenade skill hits 20+. How to increase your grenade level other than skill gems is by getting plus projectile level on crossbows, amulets, and the Prism of Belief jewel, which is only one divine at the time and making this guide. To elevate the stress on your mana issues, you can spec into the Price of Freedom node or anoint it on your amulet, also getting skill to life cost on jewels. The skill tree will be put in a link below the video. I am constantly changing the tree depending on upgrades to gear and the like, so please familiarize yourself with the tree and change it to suit your gear and play style. The main gear pieces for the build is the crossbow, helmet, and robes. Everything else is based on budget and availability of gear. The crossbow wants to have the biggest physical damage you can get, as we convert 100% physical into fire. You can also have fire damage on it, as that is the only elemental damage type we use. Make sure it's a bombard crossbow for the additional projectile, as this is worth 20% damage. Nothing else really matters on the crossbow, as we are not really scaling attack speed or crit. For the rest of the gear, just try to get as much life as you can, because the robe and helm doesn't have any. Make sure you get above 40% chaos resistance to stop stupid deaths from chaos effects. For rings, aim for flat physical and fire damage, which we are scaling, and preferable on breach rings, so you can quality up to 50%. Same on gloves, flat physical and fire damage with life. Make sure you get your other resistances capped up to their maximums as well. Run a tri-resistance belt with flat life if you don't have ingenuity belt, which isn't needed but is awesome for scaling the damage on rings. With your boots as much move speed as possible so you can be mobile when needed on boss fights. Because of how the gas grenades work with the helmet, you can stack them up beforehand, and they will only explode once the boss is targetable, allowing you to one-shot most non-pinnacle bosses before they have time to react, making this build an easy build to farm Chaos Trials, which is a good place to make currency around 40 exalts per run, with a run taking 15 minutes if you're dialed in. You can also abuse Herald of Ice on this build for insane breach clear, but requires 2 unique items. First item is Blue Flame Bracers, which need to be corrupted with less than a 100% conversion to cold damage. The reason for this is 100% conversion would make our Radiant Grief Helmet stop igniting. Second item is Pulcherkeln Ring, which makes Herald of Ice freeze, so it can chain off itself. This abuse will probably be patched out in the upcoming patch, so don't rely on it. As most meta builds are going to be nerfed in the upcoming days, I feel like this build is a safe bet to not be touched or maybe even buffed. I will be doing a written guide which will go into further detail and will be linked below the video. Any questions, please ask in the comments section, and I will get back to you as soon as I can.